And I always tell people, I can't draw, I can't sing, I can't play, guitar, but I can make an elegant glass of wine that I really do think that people, when they open it, they enjoy, and they enjoy it with company. And that's something that's art to me. You know what I mean? Right. When you have that first sip and, your taste buds open up and you really see what wine can do.
Welcome to Growing Inspiration, the podcast that nurtures your passion for the arts and creativity. I'm your host, Shayna McLean, and I'm thrilled to take you on this delightful journey through the vibrant world of arts and culture. In each episode, you can expect engaging interviews with a diverse range of artistic and creative individuals. We'll delve into what inspires them, explore their unique creative processes, and discover how their art enriches their lives. Together, we'll uncover the beauty of literature, the performing arts, the visual arts, food, wine, and spirits, and the inspiration gained through travel. Whether you're a connoisseur or just beginning your exploration, our conversations will inspire you to deepen your understanding and appreciation of the arts. So get ready to discover new perspectives, spark your creativity, and join a community of fellow art lovers. Today's guest is Dustin Miner, the winemaker at family-owned Nokesville Winery in Nokesville, Virginia. What began as a hobby interest for Dustin has become a passion and a family business that has won awards such as the Silver Medal in the Virginia Governor's Cup for his 2022 Norton. As you will hear, Dustin's creativity and artistic approach to the intricacies of the winemaking process translate to customers who are excited for each new release and a growing presence in the Virginia wine industry. Join me as we learn about the science behind the incredible variety of directions a wine can take in the hands of a creative winemaker. So, Dustin, thank you for joining me on the show today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me, yes.
We are here at Nokesville Winery with Dustin Miner, and could you tell us a little bit about how you got started in winemaking, like what actually drew you to it? Because this isn't your first career.
No. So I'm actually a professional firefighter. I've been a professional firefighter for about 21 years now. Part of that was I majored in organic chemistry. When I met my wife, we were living in Arlington at the time, and I was just drinking beer and vodka like any young 20-year-old. And my wife started going out to winery with her friends, and I just didn't want to hang around, so I was like, I'll try it, and really got to really enjoy going out to wineries and enjoying the farm aspect of it. And I like to say my first wine drunk was definitely an experience. I had a great time, and then from there it was really just drinking wine and enjoying it. And this is so when I was down in Florida, my wife and I were actually at Disney, and we had a little more money at the time. We were at Italy, and asked the waiter, I'm like, hey, what wine would go well with whatever meal I was having? And he actually suggested a Sangiovese, and I was like, I've never even heard of it before. Poured this Sangiovese, and it changed my life at that point, because that was like the real first good bottle of wine I probably ever purchased. And then from there, really just trying to understand what makes a good bottle versus bad bottle. When my wife and I moved to Nokesville about 12 years ago, we planted a couple vines just because it was all grass, just for something to look at, I guess. But 3 or 4 years later, when the grapes started coming in, started making wine, it was horrible. My friends wouldn't even drink it. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? You read about it and you're like, it's just, and really, if you think about it, people in jail make wine in toilets. We always call it toilet wine. You know what I mean? Wine is a naturally occurring phenomenon. And I'm like, why can I not do this? From there, I started reading more, enjoying more, and then making just a lot of different wines. And then over the pandemic, we were buying Norton grapes from Chrysalis, and they had no assistant winemaker. So when I was talking to them, picking up vines, he's like, hey, would you want to be the assistant winemaker? I'm like, you know what? At that point, the fire department offered me about 3 months off. I've been working so much that they gave me about 3 months off, and I really got to just kind of hone the art. And really from there, worked 2 other harvests with 2 other wineries, and that's when my wife saw what, the winery did, made me happy, especially being out in the vines. And she's like, why don't you just go for it? I'm like, I don't think she understood how much money it really cost. But yeah, she told me to go for it, and I think she regrets that decision. I don't think she regrets it now, but at first it was the first couple of years. She's like, "That's a lot of money we're spending." I'm like, "These tanks and everything are not cheap." So, but it's been a fun process, and going from literally making wine in the basement. We got our commercial wine license actually in the house. We have a press over there in the corner. That little press was our first commercial press. From there, we went. Then we built this building about 2 years ago. and then really started to, we make about 1,000 cases a year, and that's what this building is meant and designed for. So.
Wow, that's a great journey. When you were first making the wine and then you kind of progressed, like looking back, can you identify what it was that you were doing wrong? Every time. I mean, I make mistakes every year. And this is something I think really the fire department taught me is it's okay to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. You learn from your mistakes, you adapt, and you advance from them. Anyone that, does it right the first time really didn't learn anything. Learning a lot of mistakes and faults and fixing those things really makes you appreciate what this is. And I always tell people, I can't draw, I can't sing, I can't play, guitar, but I can make an elegant glass of wine that I really do think that people, when they open it, they enjoy, and they enjoy it with company. And that's something that's art to me. You know what I mean? Right. When you have that first sip and, your taste buds open up and you really see what wine can do. It's not just the drunken out, it's the flavor profile, it's the taste. And it's really an occasional thing that's fun to do. Right. So right now we have the Petit Verdot, and that's very nice. It's very smooth.
So all my wines, I do love a good amount of acid. And acid does a lot of things from when you're drinking too. It opens up your flavor profile, it opens up your taste buds, and it does two things. One, it makes you want to, when you're pairing with food, eat more with it. And the second thing, it makes you want to drink more, which is both two things that I love to do. So the Petit Verdot has a good amount of acid on the mid palate, but it ends with these nice, beautiful tannins. So it makes it a well-balanced wine. We have 3 acres out in Percival. That's where our Petit Verdot comes from.
Okay.
It's our property out there. We pay a company to maintain it, and then I go out there a couple times a year during harvest or summertime, getting in and doing lab work, and then we pick it at the right time.
Right.
But our Petit Verdot is literally grown for our Norton to help with Norton, because Norton doesn't have a lot of tannins, and it ends up being so fantastic that we make a single varietal out of it.
Okay. So for the Norton, and that's something that I want to get to, is that it's a grape that is particular to Northern Virginia, and I think it's a historical grape, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. So it's a grape known to all Virginia. So Dr. Norton, if you ever get a chance, you can read the book The Wild Vine.
Okay.
When we first started planting, our first rows were Cayuga and Chamberson, and because they grow pretty well here, and I was able to get my hands on them. The Cayuga actually comes from Connecticut, where I'm from. Okay. A good family friend, actually an ex-girlfriend's father, owns a winery, a vineyard up there. And I was up there visiting, and I brought some cutlings down and planted those. The Chamberson we got from a local vineyard around here, and planted it, and obviously planted well. We only have 1 row of Chamberson. After planting it, that's when I really got into Norton, and I just never wanted to plant more, so now I just plant more Norton. But when I was buying it from Chrysalis, that's when you really learn about the history of Norton. And we're going to get into some science here. So a vine is self-pollinating. So unlike a tomato plant or a tulip, right, the vine will open up and blossom, and then in 3 days it will close itself up and it will make a seed. So it will open up, pollinate itself, and then close up. So in 3 days you can take the pollen out of that one and then go put it into another grape. When it closes up, it'll make a new grape. And usually what you're trying to do is take a grape that has hardy, mold, bug disease resistant, and some kind of flavor profile you're looking for. We don't know what Dr. Norton actually really used. We even did a chemical makeup of it. I believe it's Pinot Noir in there, and it's probably some native grape. What he did was take it to pollinate, put it in a grape, let the grape grow, plant the grape, make a vine out of that one grape seed, let that vine grow up to like 3 or 4 years, make a wine out of it, and if he liked it or not, and then he would have a whole experiment. During his wife's childbirth, she actually passed away with the child. He became so distraught that he would just go to work, and then when he'd come home, he'd be in the vineyard. And that's why I really do say it's a wine made out of passion, because he was just so upset that he didn't want to do anything else, and I could totally understand that. And that he found this varietal, and he ended up making this varietal that is mold and bug resistant. We always like to say, you can always leave Norton alone. It's always going to make fantastic grapes. It's not always true. You still have to do a lot of things to it. It's an easy grape to grow. It's a very difficult grape to make wine out of, which is a lot of wineries don't like to make it because, or if they do make it, they make it so harsh that it's almost undrinkable. I specialize in Norton. All the wines that I make I make to showcase Norton. Even our whites. In our whites, we have a Cayuga grape that, it came from Connecticut. Again, a very easy grape varietal to make or grow, a more difficult grape to make wine out of. But it makes a fantastic wine, which we can spray a lot less. The bugs don't eat it as much. So it's a fantastic grape to grow out there where if you miss a spray or if it's even this 2024 vintage, we lost Cab Sauv. We lost a lot of the Cab Franc just because of the rain. So we had 3 hurricanes, and the Norton survived all of it. It was fantastic, and we like to call it our workhorse for our reds. So it's a varietal that's it won the world's best wine in 1876, and I'm here to try to showcase that again. Is that not all Nortons are the same, and that if you actually take your time and understand what the grape is, and this is where that organic chemistry comes into play, you can really make a fantastic wine with it. And it's got some really good awards in it.
That's amazing, because that has been my experience in some of the vineyards around Northern Virginia. Like, let's not try the Norton because it's always just it tastes like grape jelly made into wine.
Yes.
And so I'm very interested to
so when we first opened up, we would have tastings here, and people saw the Norton, they go, I'm gonna skip it, and I got so upset with it that I just started having unlabeled wine. And when they would say skip it, I would just pour it in the next wine without them telling it. And they would go, oh my God, this is fantastic. This is Norton. And we like to say we make Norton for non-Norton drinkers. It's definitely Norton in there that Norton fans love it. But again, if we're going to change the mindset of what people, again, you grow what you can grow, and make the best wine out of it. And I do think Norton is going to be one of those wines on the world stage again. You just can't treat it like a Merlot or a Cab Sauv, you can't do that. You have to do a lot of things during the winemaking process to soften it up and make a fantastic Norton. But once it is done correctly, people, it's just that we sell a lot of it every year. So.
That's amazing. So we'll get to that here
yes.
later on. Can you tell us kind of about your whole catalog? Like, what is the breadth of the wine that you make?
So for our whites, we have our first one, which is our Lynn. And this is a blend of all 3 of our whites. All whites are, most of the whites are grown here on property. We do have a leased property out in Middleburg area that we get some more from, but it's Pinot Gris, so Pinot Grigio. We make it in the Italian style, so it is a true Pinot Grigio, not a French Pinot Gris. Cayuga, and then we have Albarino. It is 3 wines together, and then it is 1.5% residual sugar. This one's actually 2% residual sugar. Our new one's going to be about 1.5. We only have about 3 cases of it left. We like to say it is a tropical drink in your mouth. It is our Sunday porch pounder. It's one of the wines we make the most of, and we sell out of it every year. We are literally about to sell. We have 2 cases left.
Yeah.
We're actually waiting for our members event next weekend, 2 weekends from now, and then the new one will be released, and then it'll be available for purchase. Because our members always get first dibs on all the wine first. But it is like tropical notes in your mouth. It's fantastic. Then we have Cayuga. Our Cayuga is very different than upstate New York. So Cayuga is actually meant to grow in the Finger Lakes area, colder climates. When I planted it down here, it just grew so well. On average, let's say a Pinot Gris acre is roughly, you'll get maybe 3 tons per acre. Cayuga, you're looking almost 5 to 6 tons per acre, double what you're getting. And again, it's less spraying. The bugs, it's hardy enough where it's going to survive and do fantastic. And up north, they don't have the growing season that we do in Virginia. So usually their bud break is, May time frame, mid-May, end of May, and they have their first cold snap usually in September, October, where our bud break is usually end of March, early April, and we won't, there's times I'm mowing in December, so we can have a very long growing season. And our Cayuga usually about end of March, early April, it will bud break, and then we usually pick it early August. So it has a very long growing season. We can actually get it up to the right numbers. We like to call, so your sugar, your content, your pH, your malic, your total acidity. And then we pick it usually early. It's one of our first things that we pick. And it makes it just a tropical, very acidic. It's like what I like to say is a Riesling, a German Riesling meets a Sauvignon Blanc, because it has that Sauvignon Blanc tartness. Again, it's one of those people like, I don't want the Cayuga. It's very sweet. I go, That's if you go to New York, it's sweet. Here, we actually get it completely dry, and I think just because of our climate here and our soil and the heat, that it stresses it and it gets all these tropical notes.
That's great.
Yeah. And then we also grow Pinot Gris on the property. I've always loved Pinot Grigio. It's one of those very acidic, green apple, lemony notes of wines. I think it's a very underrated wine. Mm-hmm. I think when people say, hey, I love Chardonnay, I go, well, there's something wrong with you. There's no buttery Chardonnays, no buttery whites here. And I appreciate all types of wines. It's just, I want something when you drink it, it opens up your palate. It makes you think, it makes you want to either drink more or eat more, and that's what we're really trying. I love the acid in it. And then we have the Albarino as our last one that that's part of our 2 acres out in Middleburg area. We have a couple rows here, but they were just test rows. I ended up planting more Pinot Gris instead. And it's a fantastic wine. We used to do Petit Manseng, which is a good wine. It's a very good known Virginia wine. But once we started drinking Albarino and enjoying the Spanish varietal too, and Albarino is more of the Portuguese style, while Albarino is more of the Spanish Spain style. So we make it more of a Spain style, more acidic, more acid. Right. And it ends up being fantastic. So those are our whites, and then we have our entry-level red. We call it our front porch. That's our Bordeaux blend. It's Virginia Merlot, Virginia Petit Verdot, California Cab Sauv. This year we're actually adding some Cab Franc to it. So it's going to be four of the 5 Bordeaux grapes. That is all aged in neutral oak. So it's that perfect party wine. It's very fruity. It's dry, but very fruity. So sweet wine, white wine drinkers tend to like it. My father-in-law actually puts it in the fridge for about an hour before he drinks it. As long as you're drinking the wine, I don't mind. Just don't put ice cubes in it. And then it's a beautiful, you don't have to pair it with anything. Just open it up, enjoy. And then from there, we make a Sangiovese. We actually have 1 row of Sangiovese still here that actually goes into one of our other wines, into our campfire. But most of the Sangiovese we get now is from California. So that's the only thing that we're actually really getting from California. We're supposed to be getting Cab Sauv from Virginia this year, but because of the hurricane, we lost it. So we got some Cab Sauv from California again. So we have Sangiovese, and then we have our campfire, which is our more heavy blend. That is where I get full range of how I want to make that wine. It's a very bold wine. It's got Norton Heavy, 55%. It's got Petit Verdot, Tannat, Merlot in there. That one's aged both in French and Hungarian oak. So you get the caramel notes from the French oak, and then you get the coffee notes at the end from the Hungarian oak. And even the Petit Verdot, most of the bolder wines, we age both in French and Hungarian oak. So it does half and half. And then from there we have our Norton, which is fantastic. We got silver in the Governor's Cup for that. It's got 94 points USA Wine Competitions and double gold San Francisco. And then we have our Tannat and our Petit Verdot.
Wow, that's amazing. And that you've gotten those awards when you really haven't been doing this for very long.
Yes, when we actually got the silver in the Governor's Cup, everyone started going, the other wineries that I work closely with, they obviously saw what we were doing and the passion. And when these other wineries started hearing of us, like, who is this guy? And then we just kind of really blew up. I think once people in the industry really started stopping by, and everyone in the industry loves to try other people's wine, right? Mm-hmm. Our wine members, they're called the Ville Club. Most of them are actually industry people.
Really?
We opened up at midnight, and we were sold out by noon the next day.
That's amazing.
Yes. So most of them actually just were industry people that have been drinking the wine. My wife and I we weren't really going to do memberships off the bat, and then we decided to because we wanted to get a little more investment in it going. And they've been fantastic ever since. We've actually doubled it up, and we sold out in less than 2 hours the second time.
Wow, that's great.
So we have about 50-something. They're going to be mad at me because I don't know the exact numbers. 52. They all get their own personal glasses with their names on it, so it's just for them when they come in. We do have about a 16-person waiting list to join the membership. We always we have our membership next, not this weekend, but the following weekend. We'll be closed and just for members, and we get to do flights. And we like to say everything for the members is educational. So 4 times a year, we do educational events. It's not just our wine. I'll bring outside wine in, and we'll talk about it. We actually talk about how to properly taste wine. and they get to go barrel tastings and all kinds of cool things. But they get to see it from beginning all the way to the end, and they get first dibs on everything. So we do make a rosé that's sold out by just our membership alone. We make a bubbly wine or Lily, which is the Lynn but bubbly version.
Okay.
And that sells out just from our membership. So it's just pretty much for them. And whatever's they don't buy during the member event, then that goes to general public after that. So.
Wow, that's great. We met at a wine dinner at Carmelo's in Manassas. Do you do a lot of those types of events?
We do. So when we first opened up, all our wine was sold through distributor. After my wife and I joked, after we got our commercial license and we started picking our grapes and making the wine, I was like, I was making wine for 3 other wineries, helping out at that point. We were making our own wine for about 7 years, homemaking wine. And then once we had it in our bottles, we're like, what do we do with this now? And you know what I mean? You study how to make wine. My wife has a business degree from Penn State, a master's. But making the wine is one thing, selling it is a whole other art. Yeah. And it was funny the first couple months. It was like I was an encyclopedia salesman. I had my little backpack of wine, and I would go to places that I thought my wine would sell well at. And I would go and I would pour the wine. I would talk to the owners or the managers, and I would hustle until they would sign. And then from there, we just started, getting contracts and people buying it. And that's how we were able to afford pretty much this place was, selling it out and then doing those wine dinners. So we did a lot. We still do a lot. We have the contract for the Art Factory in Manassas. Okay. So we pair up with them. So they do murder mysteries, they do plays. Oh, wow. So we're the only alcohol allowed to be sold on property. So we'll have our wine, and we also host a cidery from Rapidan, Virginia. So we offer cider for people that don't want wine but like beer, but we offer the cider. But that's been an awesome partnership. So those have been great events. And then obviously when we met Carmelo's, if you ever look at their wine list, it's fantastic, and that's something that we always wanted to be in. Is a restaurant with a beautiful leather wine book, and that's what we're aiming for, and that's what we are. So right now we're in Luray, Front Royal, Manassas, Bealton, Warrenton. We're trying to get out to Arlington area next, that northern Virginia area. Our 2025 goal is to get out there. The facility you see right now where we're having this is where we actually make the wine, and then we're open on Friday, Saturday, Sundays here. We just signed a contract where we'll be moving the tasting room to downtown Nokesville, right across the street from Hector. So we'll have a tasting room that's open, so it can be open more and then a little bit later also, because right here is our property. My house is here, our vine's in the backyard, and then again, this is where this building was designed to make wine, and that's its sole purpose, really. I mean, my wife and I, even when we first opened, we didn't plan on really being open all the time. But people really do enjoy coming in and trying the wine. And I get it, when you're spending, $30, $45 on a bottle, you want to try it first before you kind of commit to that. And we've noticed that even our distribution sales have helped, because people come to the winery, they try the wine first, and now they feel comfortable wherever they live to buy the wine. And so the tasting room is going to be a good addition to that.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned your kids, and I saw on your website that this is a true family affair.
Oh, yes.
Are they still very involved in the winemaking and other parts of the business?
So, yes. Especially during planting or pruning, my kids will go out. My daughter actually does all the lab work for us. So she'll come in on Saturdays or Sundays when she doesn't have soccer. Before, doing the lab work in the bare room would 6 or 7 hours, because you have to take samples, and then you have to what's called titration, where you have to hand drop and then until it turns a certain color, and you have to mark those numbers down. About 2 years ago, we upgraded to this handheld computer that all you do is take a drop of it and it does the numbers for you. So she's very happy that we spent the couple $1,000s for that computer. So we still have a lot of money invested in lab equipment, but she doesn't. Now she goes in there, and she's usually done about 2 or 3 hours. But they always help with bottling, labeling. Because we're living in Nokesville, Brentsville is still an agricultural school, so they get actually excused absences for anything that has to do with the farm. Oh, wow. From digging holes. Both my kids play high-end soccer. My daughter was actually in Spain 2 years ago, and my son was with us at that point. So she was with the team. My son was with us. My wife we actually booked a couple wineries. You have to meet the owners. She set up this whole little trail thing. And one of the wineries we were at, they had probably like 20 adults out there, and they had a cool little thing where they had the same wine, one in French oak, one in American oak. And they had to see if people could tell the difference. And obviously in Europe, my kids, They do try wine. I mean, I would let them drink it. I have nothing against it, especially when it's fermenting. My daughter loves when it's about halfway through fermentation. So it's about 12 to 13 bricks, so it's still sweet. She'll go right up to the tank and take a glass of that. It's the only time she really does like it. But during this little event, they had a smell and taste of wine to see if it was French or American oak. And they asked my son if he would try. He wanted to do it. He goes, "Oh, of course." So my son smelt it right off the bat. He goes, "Oh, that's American oak," right? And half these 20 people got it wrong. And they're like, "How is this little 12-year-old kid?" So my son was the one that has to clean the barrel. So after we empty the wine out of the barrels, you have to rinse it, and then you have to smell the barrel to see if it's still good. So he has to stick his nose in the barrel every time, and we have 30, 40 barrels, right? So he's sticking his nose in there and he's smelling it, and you can smell the difference between French and Hungarian, or French and American oak. So that American oak is more evergreen, pine-ish, while that French oak is more caramel. And he knew it right off the bat, right from the smell. And everyone was amazing. I'm like, this is what he does. This is how he makes his money right here. Yeah. So, but they work events. So actually in the Commonwealth of Virginia, it's actually a pretty neat law where if it's part of a farm, and obviously you're producing alcohol, you can actually, my daughter can actually still, even though she's only 16, she can actually still sell wine, long as it's not open. She can't pour it, but she could sell bottles. Even my 13-year-old son can do it. So she'll go into events and farmers markets, and she'll actually go sell the wine. Wow. She knows how to use the system. Yeah, when she wants extra money, she knows, like, hey, there's an event coming up. Can I go work? And I'm like, all right, sure, sounds good. So, great. But yeah, it is. I mean, my mother is actually the one that helps out on the weekends. My wife is, she does the events with us. She helps out. My wife's not really into she helps out during harvest because everyone has to help. It's all hands on deck during harvest. But she gets the final say in all of the wines with the blends. So nothing can get bottled before she says it's good. And my wife is my biggest critic. Let's put it that way. I can please a lot of other people, but pleasing her is very tough. So until she says, all right, that's good enough, and then we'll blend it. So we never release any wine that we don't think that we would never drink ourselves. So we do have wine that we use for the next year. Nothing ever gets poured out, but we'll just use it for other stuff. But it will never get a Nokesville label on it unless we think it's good enough. Because when you are a family business, you only got one shot of getting someone and them giving you a chance. And if you blow it on a mediocre wine, then that's not how we want to be remembered by. So right.
You mentioned earlier how winemaking to you is really an art form, and that is your kind of creative expression. Could you talk more about that and how you maybe blend things differently from year to year to experiment or to?
That's perfect. So I'm going to make wine that I enjoy drinking. And the reason for that is because if all this goes belly up, at least I'll have a bunch of wine that I can drink for the most part. And again, so I have a very good group of friends. And they're not, none of them are really in the wine industry, but they're very avid wine drinkers. I mean, we do wine tours about once a month. We do wine dinners where we bring wine from all over the world and we pair it with things. And they're the ones that really pushed me into starting my own winery. When we were doing these wine dinners, I was just bringing wine that I was making, and we were putting in the lineup in these blind wine tastings, and my wine was winning. And I always like to say I got free marketing out of it, because I would put a wine in there and go, hey, how much would you think you'd pay for this? Or what do you like, what do you don't like about this wine? And really, I got to see what other people's palates were. And we always rate each wine every month. And you're looking at, if I'm able to make all 12 events, that's 12 different wines that, it could be anywhere from 10 to 12 wines per month that we're doing, that we're rating. And I get to see what 20 people are like or dislike about those wines. And when I drink them, I get to go, hey, I know how, when I go wine tasting and I have a glass of wine, my wife hates it because I'm dissecting that wine. The first thing I'm saying is, do I like it or not? And what's in this wine? And why do I like it or not? And then from there it goes, would this sell? Like, are they selling it for $60? Is this a $60 bottle? Or really, is this a $30 bottle? But they probably overpaid for the fruits. So they're trying to get their money. Yeah. You know what I mean? And the wine industry is very weird. It's pretentious in a way where someone puts, hey, this bottle's a $100 bottle. I'm like, it's only worth what someone's willing to pay for it. It's like art, and that's another thing. It's like art. You know what I mean? I might be able to draw something on a napkin. No one's going to pay anything for it because I can't draw it. But maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's something, Picasso, right? It's someone's the only one worth to pay for it. And when I'm looking at that glass, I go, no one's, just because you say it's worth $100, right? The consumer should know better than that. Right. And this is what our Ville Cub that we really preach to them is, understanding your palate, understanding that when you go to a restaurant and buy a $100 bottle, that this is what you should expect out of it. So when I was really making those wines, I was really, hey, our campfire, right? I wanted a full body red wine that's you pair with beef, pork, something that's going to open up that palate. And that's what we're aiming for. And really, the bottle of wine before I bottle it, that wine is visioned for 3 years ago, all the way back to the field. And the perfect example is our Pinot Gris. We like more acid in that Pinot Gris to make it more Pinot Grigio. So we add more urea, we add a lot more things in the field to bring that pH up. So that, it takes time to do that. So we're doing that 3 years in advance before we're even picking. And then that way, if I have a vision of what a bottle should taste like, right, I'm making small corrections in the field, or even big corrections maybe in the field to fix it, where by the time it's fruit, right, now by the time I bring it, then I'm only making small corrections in the winery. And if you're doing that, then you have a vision of where you're going. We never get fruit show up to us and go, hey, what do I want to do this? No, that fruit has already been decided where it's going to go and how it's going to be made. Another perfect example is our Merlot. So we get Merlot. I'm not a real big fan of Merlot. I think it's a great blending wine. Merlot on its own is a typical just plain wine to me, right? But it's a great blending wine. It softens up wines, but it doesn't really add any bad flavors to wine. So I think it's a fantastic blending wine. And you'll never see Nokesville Merlot, Nokesville Cap Sauv. We like to do a lot of different things. But we have Merlot, and we get it from Charlottesville. And I work with the grow out there, and we actually let the Merlot hang a lot longer than anyone else lets it hang. And the idea is that we're actually raising the pH, so we're dropping the acid on it, raising the pH. So when we pick that Merlot, it's about 3.8 pH, 3.9 pH, which is very high pH, which means it's not acidic at all. And the reason for that is because it gets blended in our Norton, which is a very low pH. So we're growing that Norton or that Merlot specifically, again, for Norton. So we're never going to make a single variety. When I pick it, he thinks I'm crazy. But I got to remember, my Norton comes in at 3.3. So when I blend that 3.9, it brings it to 3.5, which then is the perfect acid for Norton. So everything is picked or grown a certain way to help, again, that vision of where I want that wine to be. And knowing that the chemistry of it, right, is where that art comes in. Knowing that, hey, Norton doesn't have tannins, or hey, the Tannat, another great example. So if you ever have our Tannat, it is very bold. The first couple Tannats I ever bottled, it was just regular Tannat, and it took about 2 years in bottle to finally mellow out a little bit to where the tannins. So what we ended up doing was halfway through fermentation, because the tannins come from the skins and the seeds. So halfway through fermentation, we actually take them off skins and seeds, so about 11 bricks, and then we finish it in tank. And that allows it to soften up beforehand. So the Tannat for 2023 was the first time we did that, and we sold 30 cases in not even 2 months. I actually had to take it off the tasting menu because it went crazy. I was like, whoa, I need this to slow down here a little bit. So knowing the chemical makeup and the chemistry of it, right, really does help to have that vision of where you want to go. And if a winemaker is really just picking fruit and go, hey, what can I do with this? I think if you're in Napa, right, where you have that name and you have that recognition and everyone's going to buy it because I'm from Napa, right? When you're in Virginia, and yes, we've been around for a while, right? But a lot of people are really seeing what Virginia wine can really be. And there's a big group of our winemakers. I know you were at Seth's at LaGrange. That we are really passionate about showcasing what Virginia can actually do, and when I hate it when people say, "Oh, you guys are up and coming." No, we've been here for 30 years, and this is me on my soapbox. But like 20 years ago, Virginia took this turn where these wineries wanted just to make more money, and they made it very mediocre wine because they knew if they built this facility and this venue and had this beautiful view, consumers would just drink the wine and not really appreciate what's in the glass. And this is what we're trying to do, is showcase, again, I want Norton to win the world's best wine again. And I want it to be a Nokesville Norton.
Yeah.
And this is our passion, where we're going for is, that not all Virginia wines are the same. And I get it, what they're doing. That's fine. It's a very different marketing. When you come to Nokesville Winery, you taste all the wine. You usually buy bottles and then you leave, and then you come back and buy more, or any place. We're not a party facility here. People don't come here and hang out all day. Not that I would discourage it in any way, but it's not. We're talking about family winemaking here. It's a very Italian style winery where you come in, you try the wine, you like it, and you leave, and you buy, and you come back for more, hopefully. And that's the kind of vision that we're kind of going, even with the tasting room in a way, is, getting people to go, hey, all right, we're going to give you a shot, and then we're going to try it. Now we sell through, I think we're selling, 50 or 46 states, I think we're selling, and we ship to. So people come in from all over. That's the best thing of being right outside of D.C. Cherry blossoms are coming, so we know it's going to be a little more busy. People are willing to come out here and try it. And then from there, we hopefully have clients for life. So that's our really vision, where we kind of want to go with this now.
Yeah.
So.
And you used a term a few minutes ago about bricks. Could you explain to our listeners what that means?
So bricks is the scientific version of level of sugar. Okay. So this is, now we're getting some real science here. This is the stuff that I love. So how to make wine, right? You are converting the sugar into alcohol. Well, when you do that, it's three things are really happening. So you get the sugar level to you want, and then you have a measure of that sugar, which is called bricks. So if I want to make a very alcoholic wine, let's say a 16% wine, right? I need that sugar level to be really, really high. We're talking about like 26 bricks to 30 bricks, right? But if you want it to be, our whites tend to be around 11 to 12.5%. Again, you want to showcase that fruit. That's where we're happy with our whites. And our reds were anywhere from 12% to 14%. That's our happy zone. So we pick our grapes depending on the level of bricks, one thing, and then the other thing is pH, and then a total acidity. So when you're picking the grapes at a certain sugar content, then you have to use specific yeast, because if you have a lot of sugar, yeast are just like any human being in a way, right? We like to be in the proper temperature, right? And we want to eat the right amount when we want to eat, right? If you go to a buffet and you're already full, you're not going to eat anymore, right? If it's freezing cold out and 28 degrees, you don't feel like eating, right? If it's 110 degrees, it's too hot for you to eat. So you want to be in that right temperature range. So when we're picking the grapes, we're making sure all the numbers are correct and we're using the specific yeast. There's catalogs and catalogs of yeast. We are not a natural winemaking facility. In Virginia, there's just so many variables. We can have 4 seasons in one day, compared to Napa, where it's always that perfect 65, 70 degrees. In Virginia, it's not. That's why I take a Virginia winemaker versus, and I have a lot of Napa winemaker friends, right? We have to every day figure out what we're going to do to get back on track what we're going to do. I use commercial yeast because sometimes the fruit doesn't come in the best. Or, hey, there's other, especially when you're using native fruit or vinifera, like certain vinifera like Merlots, but are hybrid grapes. You want to use a yeast that will help the characteristics of it and gets, again, back to the organic chemistry. So we use yeast strains that are meant for certain temperatures and certain sugar levels. Okay. So when it gets to the sugar, when we pick it, right, we'll either crush it to stem it, we'll press it right off. There's a lot of different things we can do. And then we add that yeast to it. And once the yeast start eating the sugar, it does 3 things. 1, it makes the alcohol, which is what we want, right? 2, it makes CO2. This is how champagne's actually made. So they leave some yeast in the bottle. The yeast leave the leftover sugar, which then creates natural CO2, which then makes the bubbly of the wine. The third thing, it creates heat. So all our wines, and this is something that I learned at Chrysalis, and then obviously making small batches, we use temperature probes in all our fermenting. Our whites get all fermented in tanks, which have chiller systems. Even our reds, which come in big T-bins, after we crush and destem it, they have temperature probes, and they have these things called warthogs, where a food-grade coolant goes through them and chills them down. So the wine stays at the temperature that I want. Again, we're keeping the yeast happy, and we can do a lot of things with that yeast. So, example, our Sangiovese. Our Sangiovese doesn't ripen enough, again, because we're in Virginia, and it's a lot of different things with Sangiovese. If it's too hot, it doesn't like it. So the first batch of Sangiovese I ever made, and that's from our fruit, it was actually midnight. I just finished up at my other winery that I was working at, so I was working my harvest. After you crush the stem and press it off, you have to take the skins and you have to go out to the field, and we have a compost bin. So you have to dump the skins, you have to clean the vat, and then you start the next wine. Well, it was midnight, coming to almost 12:30. I was exhausted, and our Tannat just finished. So I was like, oh, now I have to load this up in the tractor. And this is when I was in the house. You had to lug it upstairs, load up the tractor, bring it back. I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to age the Sangiovese on Tannat skins. And what we used was a rosé yeast. So again, this is where the science comes in here. So we crushed and stemmed the Sangiovese. We put it with the Tannat skins. We used a rosé yeast, which is a lower temperature yeast. So that rosé yeast is anywhere from 58 degrees to about 70 degrees it's happy at, so 62. So we left the temperature of the yeast at 62, which a normal fermentation is anywhere from 5 to 7 days. This was 21 days on skins, and actually pulled all the tannins, all the color out of it. When we had an Italian winemaker over, he was pouring his Chianti. I poured that Sangiovese right next to it. We did a blind tasting, and everyone thought my Sangiovese was his Chianti.
Wow.
So that's where you can actually manipulate a lot of, especially during fermentations, you can do a lot of things to that wine to make it where you want to be, again, to get that vision. So yes, it was more out of laziness that one night, but there was a plan in place what to do with that wine, because I knew Sangiovese didn't have color and didn't have tannins. Tannat has plenty of color and plenty of tannins. So it's a little cheap, but that's what makes a Virginia winemaker pretty good.
Wow, that's amazing that there are that many variables that you can tweak.
Oh yes,
to create this different
temperatures, yeast strains. I always say it's like chicken. You can bake a chicken, you can fry a chicken, you can grill a chicken, you can barbecue a chicken. There's 1,000 different ways to make chicken, right? You and I could take the same grapes from the same field at the same time, and we'd make totally different wines. And me and other winemakers do that, especially some of the wines that are the grapes that we get from other regions, Charlottesville, where we don't grow, so we get it with other wineries, and we like to see, hey, let's before it goes into blend, we'll come over, I'll try theirs. I'm like, hey, what'd you do on this one? Yeah. Oh, this is what I did. I like that. I'm going to do that next year. Oh, no, that. So it's a fun thing to see how wine progresses, because again, it's just like a chef. You know what I mean? There's so many different ways to make that wine that make it the Nokesville, the Dustin Miner way of making it. And you can, when you start drinking a lot of wines, I can travel a lot because they have contract winemakers. Even in Virginia, like a lot of the wineries, don't make their own wine, so they contract with bigger wineries that will make it for them. And I'll go to a random tasting in somewhere. I go, this tastes like a certain winemaker, and they go, hey, who's your winemaker? And they'll say, I go, I nailed it, because again, we all have different styles of what our wines are, and that's why I always say our Ville Club members, you guys are hiring me to be your winemaker. You're trusting me enough that you wanted to be a member because the wine that I make is the wine that you like.
Right.
So.
That's amazing that you would have your own signature that way, that you could tell a friend that had made it in another place. Well, would you like to move on to Norton?
So this Norton is the 2023. Our 2022 actually won the silver in the Governor's Cup. I believe the 2023, we're almost about sold out of that one, is even better. So every year, obviously, learn a little more. The 2022, so most wines, even if they say single varietal, so this says Norton on it, right? By law, it has to be only 80% of that one grape. The other 20% can be any wine of the same vintage, right, that I want to blend in there to make the vision of what my Norton is. So even Nortons, they don't have a lot of tannins, but they have a lot of bitterness and acid. So we actually, again, we get our Merlot a certain way. Petit Verdot we grow a certain way, and then the Tannat we grow a certain way, all for Norton. So the first couple years, it was just Norton, Petit Verdot, and Tannat. And then about 2 years ago, I started blending some Vinifera, which is Merlot, in there to see what it do, and it really did help with that mid palate. So this wine you're about to have is 85% Norton, about 7% Merlot, and then the rest is Tannat and Petit Verdot.
Okay. That's very different from other ones I've had.
Yes.
I'll give you that.
So it is not jammy. I mean, you get a little bit of that sense of Norton in there, but the Merlot really does soften it up to where that jammy notes or that what some people like to say foxy notes, and then mid-palate kind of goes away. Right. This is aged both in French and Hungarian oak, so you're still getting that caramel notes and that little coffee at the end. It is full-bodied. It's the tannins are front to back, and we like to say it's a complete wine where when you sip it, it just doesn't die at the end. It's not like you're running a marathon and then 100 feet from the finish line, you're just like, I'm done. No, it continues. It wants to keep going.
Right. That is a very long finish.
Yes.
It does get a little bit more tannic at the back, like you said.
Yep.
At the end.
And this is not even released yet, so we're still selling our 2022. This was bottled in July timeframe. It was bottled. We had a Norton event here, so we wanted to have an extra Norton for that. It got some great reviews so far. It did really well in the Homestead competition. We lost to the winner that ended up winning it, our Terra wine. Jason, he's a fantastic winemaker, did some great stuff. But yeah, I mean, to be a 2023, to make it all the way to that way and lose to Jason. But it's still, I mean, it's a very young wine. This is going to soften up every year. But with the acid on it and the pH, this wine can last 50, 60 years.
That's, I'll hand it to you. That's amazing.
Thank you.
I will now count myself among people who will drink Norton, because that's very, very different from the other ones.
It's very, yes, and that's what we prize ourselves with. Again, it's a wine that it grows fantastic. It's just you can't treat it like a Merlot Cab Sauv. You have to treat it differently, and we do specific things. We actually make it in a Pinot Noir style, which means we lightly press it. We try to get none of the bitterness from the seeds. We don't leave any, so it's called the rake is what the actual grapes are connected to. We don't leave any of that, so we crush and stem all of it. We don't do a lot of punch downs, which is where you actually break the cap up to let out that CO2. So compared to our Merlot, or even the Cab Franc that we got, right, that doesn't have enough tannins, so you're trying to beat up the grape a lot more to pull those tannins and color out. With Norton, it's fine on its own, so we just try to lightly do that to break up the cap to give it soft, and then we try to take it off seeds as soon as possible to give it that softer flavor. Wow,
that's great. So do you have events coming up or things that you're looking forward to this year that you're kind of planning for?
So 2024 was a very difficult harvest. We had very little rain up front, and then we had the hurricanes, and then obviously getting the grapes, making the wine out of it. We're seeing a lot of stuff now that's in the barrel. Like we just finished up bottling all our whites. Now we'll be working on the reds a little bit. But we're seeing a lot of, again, things that we did during harvest because of the chemistry. Hey, we knew what kind of grapes we were getting, and we had to do a lot more things during harvest. And again, it's theory. If you do this, it should equal this. But it takes time to see the difference. So now that it's been these wines have been in barrel, it's a couple months now. Now we can start pulling them out of the barrels, seeing the samples, and I'm seeing a lot of the work that we did initially, which was very stressful. Again, when you put your life and soul and all your money into a business, and then it's not the best harvest, you're like, oh, what am I going to do? But again, that's where if you were a lazy winemaker, you're going to have some horrible 2024 wines. But if you are a winemaker that was on his or her game and did the hard work during harvest, it's starting to pay off now. We're seeing it, and I'm tasting other people's wines. I go, what'd you do? Oh, I just did my normal thing. I go, you couldn't have done that. That's the worst thing you could have ever done. So that was majority of my stress and time. We have our member event coming up, and obviously opening up the new tasting room in downtown Nokesville. Yeah. So we're getting that up and ready. We have the Art Factory. We're actually going to be hoping to do first, now that we have the license in Manassas City, hoping to start doing some maybe from First Fridays in Manassas. Some more wine dinners with our restaurant partners. But we have the Tulip Festival coming up over at Burnside Farms in Nokesville. If you've never done it, look it up. It's Burnside Farms. They do tulips and sunflowers. It's about a month-long festival for each one. You get to go cut your own tulips. We'll be there selling wine. Get a glass, get a bottle, walk around. It's a very big picture Instagram. A lot of people people come all the way from Delaware, Jersey, South Carolina. It's the biggest tulip farm in the East Coast. And it's so funny that, when they go there, they'll try the wine, and then they'll come here, and then we're like, where are you from? Florida. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we ship to Florida. Okay.
So we have the Tulip Festival coming up, and then we're always doing events at the Art Factory.
Okay, great.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun and very educational.
Yes.
And really looking forward to taking a few of these home.
There you go.
So thanks again. And
You're very welcome.
Talk to you another time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Growing Inspiration. I hope you found today's conversation as inspiring as I did. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to subscribe and share it with your friends. To dive deeper into the world of arts and creativity, visit my website at gardenofmydelights.com for exclusive content and resources, including show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to my newsletter for the latest updates and insights. You can also connect with me on Instagram for more inspiration at Garden of My Delights. Until next time, keep nurturing your creativity and looking for beauty and wisdom all around you.